exclusive. I-24 News investigative report, which is now posted on our website, demonstrates just how difficult that can be and the failure of the U.S. in punishing those who violate the sanctions. The report details how both Iran and its key ally, the Syrian regime of Bashar al-Assad, were able to circumvent the sanctions and purchase from American companies 4 civilian jet planes, some of which have been retooled for military use. For more on the story, we're going to speak with its author, our correspondent Jacob Atkins, who speaks to us from Tasmania, and from our Washington studio, Dr. Emmanuel Adelenghi, a senior fellow at the Foundation of Defense for Democracies. Let me start, Jacob, though, with you. Just can you explain to us, as briefly as you can, what transpired here? How did Syria and Iran get a hold of those planes?
Well, I just want to make one brief correction firstly, and that's that there's no evidence that the aircraft have been retooled for military purposes. So we're looking at 3 pretty clear-cut cases of Mahan Air, an Iranian airline, and Syrian Arab Airlines, a Syrian airline, obviously, obtaining jets, including one from the United States, despite the sanctions on them. And then a 4th, apparently foiled attempt last year. So the first case there was a jet which flew in April 2016 from Florida to Kazakhstan. It was in Kazakhstan for a few months, then went on to Iran, and then went on to Syria, where it's now in the fleet of Syrian Arab Airlines. Then in February 2017, 2 further jets. These are all, by the way, Airbus A340-300 long-haul aircraft. They flew from Athens to Iran, despite being registered in Kazakhstan. And one of those is now in the service of Mahan Air, and the other one seems to be used by the airline for spare parts, as far as I can make out. And then in the 4th foiled case, in October 2016, a jet was flown in contradiction to the paperwork filed to Indonesia. The US seems to have believed it was destined for Mahan Air and managed to thwart the sale. The story is very complex. I encourage people to read the article, but some common threads are that the involvement of companies in the United Arab Emirates, which I was certainly unable to contact, and it appears that they have almost no footprint, and also that all the aircraft, except the 4th attempt, were registered in Kazakhstan, and we know from reporting there that an anti-corruption investigation has been opened.
Jacob, just to be clear, you're contending in your article that the Trump administration somehow knew about the ways that some of these companies were getting around the sanctions and did nothing. And did you reach out to the Trump administration? What did they say to you in response?
To the first question, yes, for 2 reasons. One is there is reporting in both Chad, which can be explained in the article, and in Kazakhstan that embassy officials in the US were very well aware and following very closely the case. And the second reason is, Emmanuel will be able to explain this better. There have been previous cases of Mahan acquiring aircraft like this, and it bears all the same hallmarks. I reached out to a lot of people for this article. Almost no one responded. I did get a spokesman for the Treasury, though. This is an extract of what he said. He said that the department does not comment on, quote, prospective actions or Office of Foreign Asset Control investigations, including to confirm whether or not one exists. We don't speculate on the individual application of sanctions. He also said the US takes actions as appropriate against foreign persons providing support to designated individuals and entities.
Well, Dr. Adelenghi, maybe you can pick up on that point that Jacob did say in explaining about how it is that these aircraft are making it over there to Syria and Iran. Why do they want them, and why aren't both this administration and the previous one doing more to stop it?
First of all, thank you for having me. To the first question, these airlines have been under sanctions for decades. Mahan Air has not been able to buy a new plane basically since it was established because of US sanctions and briefly because of international sanctions. So they procure used aircraft to keep their fleet running. Now, Mahan Air is a particularly pernicious agent when it comes to Iran's aviation sector, because it is the main airline involved in transporting military personnel and weaponry from Iran to Syria, thereby providing material support to the Assad regime and Hezbollah in their war against the Syrian people. And so that's part of the reason why Mahan Air remains under sanctions, and preventing these planes from reaching Mahan Air and becoming operational in their fleet should be a U.S. policy priority. Now, as to the second question, why is it that not enough is being done? Well, the United States has sanctions, and it certainly should police the aircraft market more aggressively, but this is a very large and sometimes opaque market in the way it operates. It's as your story very well demonstrates. I think Jacob used the word serpentine to describe the path by which these planes were eventually delivered to Iran. It usually is a Chinese box system with a lot of triangulations and front companies, so it's hard to follow, to track, and to prevent. The real test, and I think the Obama administration there clearly failed that test, and it remains to be seen whether the Trump administration will perform better, is inflicting and enacting penalties and fines and designations against those entities in Europe, in Asia, in this case potentially in the United States as well, that act as intermediaries and enablers for these procurement efforts by Mahan Air. The Trump administration has already shown more appetite to use sanctions than its predecessor because of obvious reasons, mainly the Iran deal. But there haven't been any designations, fines, and penalties inflicted on intermediaries in Europe mainly, where Mahan Air still has a very aggressive procurement effort, and where, to be fair, its aircraft is flying on a daily basis to dozen destinations. So it remains to be seen whether the Trump administration will exact a price on its European allies for continuing to let Mahan Air operate.
Well, Jacob, I understand in terms of how the administration is responding, we do have some comment from the FAA, Federal Aviation Agency.
No, we don't have any comment from the Federal Aviation Administration. Their job is primarily, keeping track of the aircraft when they're in the United States. However, the documentation provided by the FAA, which is largely publicly available, certainly demonstrates that two companies in the U.S. were involved in two of the sales that I mentioned in my story.
Jacob, I want you to give us an idea, a little bit of the context. These are 4 aircraft. Is this a sign that this could be a much more rampant problem, and we've found these 4 aircraft, or could this just be one exception to a sanctions policy that's working?
Well, certainly in the process of doing the story, I also thought, hey, maybe there's more than these that I've found, but I certainly wasn't able to see any further aircraft that have been acquired in this way to Mahan or Syrian Arab Airlines. Recently, certainly in the past, they've been extremely talented at doing so. However, there is other airlines in Iran and Syria that have more recently been sanctioned by the United States.
Jacob.